How are you, Mila? Ignacia, Ronald, how are you, everybody? New people I see. To let everybody know who are new to the channel, this channel is revolving mostly around the simulation hypothesis. And my name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof that we live in a simulation. And we're talking daily about the implications and other interesting topics in science and philosophy and spirituality. Really, everything is up for grabs, and I get to interact with people and ask them what they think and what's important to them. So, welcome everybody. We're going to wait for a few more people to join in. Jacqueline, Pre Wired Child, Tribe Saint. Hey, blah, blah, how are you? Some regulars. How you doing, everybody? I'm good. Alan, 1 second. I'll be right back. All right, so for all the newcomers, again, this channel is revolving around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I claim to have found proof that we live in a simulation. We're discussing the implications and other big questions like science, philosophy, spirituality, and so on. And today, I wanted to see if we can focus on if anybody experienced. How are you, all the newcomers? How you doing, Edwin, Chris? How you doing, MEF? By the way, what is your name if you don't mind me saying? Because every day you're joining, and I want to be able to call you by your name if you don't mind. Hey, Avery. So today I wanted to focus if how many people have experienced actual what people would call manifestation. In other words, how often did it happen that you actually put your attention on something and it happened in a way that wasn't just involving you kind of putting your grinding hat on and getting there, but literally things just popped out of nowhere and things just kind of aligned. How often did that happen in your life? Also, to anybody who is here and all the regulars, I do, Kane, if we can give it a few likes just so we can get more crowd going, so we can have a lively discussion. Hey, Grant, how are you? Thank you for the likes, guys. Yeah, let's give it a little bit of a pumping so we can get more people in here. How are you, Grant? So today's question is, how often did it happen to you that you managed to actually what we would call manifest something? Yeah, I'm here every day, Sam. Also, you again. I'm glad you're here. It's a mindset and it helps to ground your energy. I've been to Peru. How was Peru? Hey, Dan, really enjoying your streams. Thank you, Rick. Rick Flair, I appreciate it. We also have the YouTube chat. Hey, Val, how are you? Stopping by to get them likes up. Thank you. That's important. So we get more people going. So somebody said about manifestation that it's a way. Again, keep sending invites by mistake. I don't know how to scroll without sending the invite. Anybody who got the invite, you're always welcome to come on, but I really need to learn how to scroll without sending the invite by mistake. Stopping by to get them likes up. No safe good food if you don't get sick. Wait, what? Oh, I see. You mean in Peru. Really appreciate you for what you're bringing to the scene. Space Guru. Thank you so much, Space. Hey, Ava. Good to see you here. I really appreciate it, Space Guru. So somebody said I couldn't. The topic today, Ava, is how many people. I would assume you have a lot of stories like that, but the topic is how often did it happen in your life that you managed to what we would call manifest something? And I guess what would qualify for manifesting, it would have to be something that was outside of the scope of the regular channels of action, right? So it's not like you went and saved up enough money and then you could make the next thing happen, which I would assume it was also part of it. But the topic is, how often did you put your attention on something and then it manifested in a way that was just incredible, mind blowing, in a way that was beyond chance and also kind of like fell into place? Linen has a neutral frequency. It helps with actual manifesting. Really? Is that interesting? I wonder if that's what Jesus' garbs were made out of. Consciously manifest because we are always manifesting. I see what you're saying. Fair enough. Yeah, consciously putting your attention on something and then the thing happening in a way that is just outside of the scope of just chance. Took me 1 year to manifest the car that I like. But did you just buy the car? Or was it something that kind of happened in the way that I'm describing? King Kernan, that's interesting. Wool has a negative frequency. Interesting. I wonder why that is. Also, who discovered this and how? About to buy me a linen cloth. Yes, salt every meal, not because it tastes good. I love salt. What does that mean? Thank you for the likes, guys. Yeah, let's keep pushing it just a little bit more. I want to get a few more people going. Today's topic, everybody, how are you, Walter, is how many people here managed to actually manifest things in a way that was what we would call, actual manifesting. Like put your attention on something and it just happens. I've recently been testing this because obviously a few times in my life it happened that I manifested things, but because I'm pretty scientifically minded, I like to test these things and to see what are the regularities. I'm sure that you're familiar with. Wait, what are we looking for here? I don't know what happened there. Okay. So keep saying the name. 1 second. Thomas Campbell, My Big Toe, right? So you're familiar with that whole genre of thought. And I really like his approach, right? Because it's taking the scientific approach to spirituality, essentially, and putting some critical thinking into what that space entails. And in my life, I've had quite a few instances in which I guess you couldn't call it manifested things. But it always happened in a way that even if I put my attention on it, for me personally, it actually started happening when I forgot that I invited that. Does that make sense? Is this a pattern that people can vouch for, or do you guys have a different experience? On YouTube, MEF is saying, I manifested turning off a lamp a few feet out of my reach by snapping my fingers and pointing at it. My friend was with me and witnessed it. Did it stop working, or it actually turned off and then you had to turn it on? And if it had one of these like on-off switches, what happened when you actually turned off the switch? MEF question for you. So let's see. Can I ask anything or particular about the topic? No, you can ask anything, Pluto. Because it has the natural, my ADD mind doesn't mind jumping around. Because it has the natural minerals our bodies need to thrive. You're talking about linen? How does one stretch chiclets to the moon? Not sure. Revelations is strongly metaphorically chakra based. Why can't people swallow one reality? Nobody's saying that the reality is not one thing. The only question is what it includes. I manifested some stuff, but it always required effort and time. You're looking for force. Yes, I manifested a job working with music after months of searching in a very unexpected way. You want to share the way in a nutshell? Mine happens right then. Thank you, Aline. Care to talk live? Sure, in a moment. Do you want to put in the topic? Because I usually like guests come on and talk about particular topics. Manifesting is not magic, it takes time. Uncle Stray, that was for you. If you want to put in the topic you want to talk about specific reality, well, that's a big subject. Okay, we'll jump on it in about 5 minutes if you don't mind. I just want to kind of settle a couple of questions about this because it's interesting to me, and then I'll send you an invite. Also, I don't know why, but it doesn't show me that I can actually send you an invite. If anybody in the chat can help, I don't know why that is. How do I invite a person that doesn't show me that I can actually invite them? I was in a Facebook group and was talking to someone about a different topic, and she told me her husband worked for Music Center and they were hiring. And that was after you were searching for it, I would assume, right, Ava? I feel it was easier to manifest when I was a kid. That's pretty common experience. I would say the same. Yes, you manifested by making it your reality, not by casting a spell. If that makes sense. Well, it does. So again, how many people here are? Wait, why am I? Oh, I can just do it here. I don't know why my internet is so slow today. That is weird. Okay. One second, everybody. So, how many of you here are actually familiar with Thomas Campbell and My Big Toe and that whole approach? Did you guys hear about it? Did anybody actually read the book? The reason I'm asking for a reason. How you doing, Uncle Stray? Wait, are you saying you're leaving? You're saying good day to you too. I hope you're not leaving. We can totally chat. I just need to figure this out. 1 second. On YouTube, Kairos DCC is saying, I don't know with certainty that I've ever manifested anything. The only times that come to mind were places of extreme need or danger. Interesting. And then MF is saying, I didn't want to get up and interrupt the Reiki to turn off the switch of the lamp. No, I get that. But then if the lamp has on and off switch, right? If you turn it off by doing this, what happened to the on and off? What happened to the lamp when you finally turned off the switch? Or is that one of these rotating ones? Ask us the question. The question was, how many people here managed to actually honestly say that they manifested something in reality? Like they put in the intention and it actually happened in an incredible way. Oh, wait. You wrote more above. I turned it off. I don't remember the lamp. Sepal turned back on and off. At the time I was giving my friend Reiki, and the lamp was, come on, and the lamp was giving my friend Reiki. The lamp was too bright, and okay, interesting. Okay, that is an interesting account. Do you think there are Agent Smiths in this simulation? I don't know. I actually think that the simulation just kind of knows, like the whole code is, I guess you can call the tapestry of existence itself the Akashic records. So it's like literally registering everything. So everything is written. The matrix is only letters. What does that mean? Christian, thank you for participating. Also manifesting moving across the country. I didn't know how I'd do it, but everything fell into place. Wait, so I have a question about that, Ava. 1 second. So this is why I'm asking these questions. So first of all, nobody answered my question about Thomas Campbell and My Big Toe. So to anybody who doesn't know, Uncle Stray, I see your comments. I'll respond in 1 moment. The reason I'm asking all of this is because, so Thomas Campbell, a lot of people told me about him. I actually heard about him in passing. I've I remember even watching a talk with him by him a long time ago. And then after my discovery, I started kind of like getting more interested in how he approached this whole thing. And what's interesting is that he is a physicist, and he essentially studied with Monroe from the Monroe Institute, like the guy who actually founded it. And he discovered that there's a lot of things that you can actually do, and you can track reality in a new way, in a way that most straightforward scientists would not be willing to entertain. And he developed an entire framework, a whole theory that involves consciousness, spirituality, and everything. But the approach he took to it is a very methodical registry of what is happening along the lines of all of these things, including manifestation and how it works and all that stuff. That's why I'm asking. So, for example, when Ava just told me, and if I understand you correctly, anything about you, Ava, is that you already lead a pretty spiritual life, right? So it's interesting that you see, for example, moving across the country and not knowing how it's going to happen as also manifestation. Would you say that it belongs in the same family of things? Because it feels to me like, and this is, up for debate, obviously, or up for discussion. It feels to me like the fact that we don't know how we're going to complete a task and then completing it, for me, wouldn't fall in the purview of like manifestation, just because, you didn't see beyond the horizon, but then things unfolded and it just happened because your brain was steering in that direction. Manifestation to me seems to be invoking some other element that is not just based on our actions, but also it's almost like the world is not cooperating. Or do you not see the difference? Is for you it's just a matter of degree? Let's see what else we got, and then Uncle Straight, I'm gonna address your question. Not get the exact job, the exact company, but it may put you in the path for what's yours. Yeah. And thought while holding if it next to my giant crystal, please give me my necklace back. Actually needing it at the time. Interesting. Spread them around outside my house. 2 days later, my crystal necklace reappeared in the same spot. Okay, that is weird. Ava is saying, I was thinking about wanting a reading early on in my spiritual exploration, but didn't have the money, which I found highly unlikely. I was shocked. Okay. Yeah, that is kind of crazy, blah blah. One life, one universe, one reality fact. Your thoughts. Yes. Nothing that I've said so far, not on these chats and not in general, goes against that idea, Uncle String. I walked into a metaphysical shop and the woman offered me a free reading without even asking her. Oh, interesting. And then I was sitting at a red light hoping it turns green. And it did? That's incredible. That is crazy. Do you feel like you manifested the green light, Uncle Stray? Uh, Also, again, if you want to help me out here, because I have no idea how to invite you for a chat because it doesn't allow me. My mother can't wear watches. They slow till they die, and is clocks around her. Oh, and clocks around her speed up like in the car. That is crazy. Did you ever record this? Because I mean, these are insane claims, right? Like incredible. Are you like TikTok cheeses? That should be my handle, TikTok cheeses. It's very catchy. And posted by Neo, which is the other Jesus, right? Moving across country and then dude, we jump way back. It's so weird that it doesn't give me these messages and then when I go back it all of a sudden appears. Let's see. I'm gonna put do not disturb. The only thing I know for sure is that I know nothing at all. Well, something, right? My partner and I both had the same strangest dream ever of incarnating from spirit realm, and we compared notes, very similar the same night even. That is an interesting claim. That is an interesting event, and I had something with a dream that was kind of crazy. I often ponder if really is every decision and cause and effect happening all at the same time. Yeah, it's very possible. So what I'm interested in is to see if we can actually track that in a way that we can find kind of common denominators there, right? Let's see. I feel like I manifested my girlfriend, my puppy, and I couldn't tell you how many times I managed to buy the last item too many times, like it was waiting for me. It sounds lovely. I love these happenings when they happen. So one of the craziest things that happened to me with a dream, for example, was a friend of mine from New York called me one day and he said, "Hey, I had a dream about you last night." Now, it was already weird because I mean, we're two grown-up dudes, right? So who calls you to tell you about you appeared in their dream? I mean, it happens. But I guess it was impactful enough that he thought that he should tell me about it. Then he told me that basically in the dream, he was in the store, in the Fakir brand store, and then I was giving him a tattoo, and he was very proud because it was the first time I was giving him a tattoo, and it was a tattoo of something cute. Okay, cool story. A week goes by. We're in my sister's. Me and my now fiance was sitting in my sister's, and my sister starts saying, "Oh, by the way, a week ago, I had a dream about you." And I was like, "Wait." And I don't know why, but I was like, "Wait, don't tell me. I'm gonna tell Kelsey, and then you tell me what you dreamt." Sure enough, I'm whispering the thing in Kelsey's ear. I told her, a friend of mine actually told me they also had a dream about me. And sure enough, the second I stopped whispering, I'm like, "Go." She goes, it was like scripted. She goes, you were giving me a tattoo. And my fiance just jumped out of the, like, jumped off the seat, jumped on the couch like Tom Cruise. And she was just like, "What?" And she's like, she thought we made, like, we planned this or something. And she's like, "Okay, what? That's crazy." And then she proceeded to say it was like a cute caterpillar. And I was like, "What? Okay, that is crazy." I was like, "Wait, what day was this?" She's like, I think it was yeah, it was after Sunday, she said. It was the day between Sunday and Monday. And then I thought about it, I was like, "Oh, so my friend called me on Monday. So they had the same dream, same night, the exact same dream about me." That was wild. Till this day, I'm kind of blown away by it. Have a dream about someone you have a universal responsibility to tell them. Really? Are these the rules? I didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know. Um, I guess I want to know, what is your definition of manifestation? We emit frequency, we attract it. I see. I see how you're saying it. Okay. How you're seeing it. So, sure, but okay, but would you say that if you want a glass of water, Ava, and you get up to get the glass of water, did you manifest a glass of water in your mind? Or did you get up to get your glass of water? That's no funny. Just last night, my brother-in-law, and we're talking about dreams, and he said, if you, oh, I see. Where am I from? Originally, I'm from Russia, but I live in LA. I don't know. He just told me he feels that way. Interesting. Let's see. This is serendipity for sure. I'm familiar with the moron. I read the. This is where. Mwah, this is dyslexia at best. I read. I'm familiar with the Moron Institute, and he wrote the Monroe Institute. So that was wonderful. I'm familiar with the Monroe Institute through my neighbor. Her father's research in the 60s and the 70s led to a collaboration with Bob Monroe. We were talking about this Monday. Interesting. Yeah, I have a friend who did some work with the Monroe Institute. He did some music for them. I did try the Gateway recordings. Anybody here tried this? It is actually kind of wild. We manifest the possibility of it. Sort of how luck equals preparation plus opportunity. I see. So you basically see everything in that through that lens. Like everything just kind of comes towards you, and it's just a matter of how readily available that thing is. If it's been done a million times before, then the channels are obvious. You know you have limbs. You know the water's over there. So manifesting water is very easy because all of it was done a million times before. So it can happen like that. But new things or more extravagant things might take a little longer just because the channels are not that clear. You have to put a lot of things in alignment. So you have to, it actually resembles one of my visions a lot because essentially it was exactly that what you're saying, Ava, that if you hold something in your mind's eye and in your emotional input long enough, eventually it will come into fruition, either through your actions or through the world basically bringing it your way, or a combination of these two more often than not. We can be conscious or unconscious of what we are manifesting. Yeah, but okay, well, that's an interesting one. So at what point, if it's unconscious, at what point does it count as you? And at what point does it stop counting as you and just starts counting as the world manifesting through you? Just happen to more of them. Do you think manifesting has anything to do with the multiverse theory? Well, obviously, if the multiverse is real, which I believe it is, then manifestation must mean that you're moving through parallel trajectories of all the possible ways, right? If we aren't thinking of a red car, we won't see it when it's in front of us. Right. So there's a part of the brain responsible for perceiving it. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm trying, as I understand, but I guess it's not really an analogy, or well, it is an analogy. But what I'm trying to stay sensitive is to both worldviews. So what version of this would make sense to both people who have a more spiritual perception of the situation, and would still make the same sense for a person who has more of a scientific um, mind frame? Because I feel like that's the language that I want to try and bring forth more than anything. How are you, Breezy? My name is Molly, by the way. Nice to meet you, Molly. Um, and I think it's important. So, for example, the idea with the car, right? So, from the perspective of a scientist or neuroscientist, they know that where your attention goes, you're going to see these things more and more, right? But we're making a larger claim. We're making the claim that no, the world would literally bring opportunities that you've invited. And that's already a much more extravagant claim than we would make in science usually, right? And I guess, is there a story in your mind that can work for both possibilities? And if it's a continuum, I think it still makes sense to me because, again, grabbing water is easy because it's right there. Everything is integrated. Your hand is integrated. You can just move. Even though if you think about it, like you're actually manifesting your hand moving, right? You don't know how you're doing it. You're just willing it to happen. But I feel like in the same way, if you have the conviction, just the same conviction you have that you can move your hand, if you have that conviction with more external things, like you're going to the store to get something, then it will happen pretty easily, right? Also, again, because you've been to the store many times, there's no problem. All you need to do is what you need to do. You just need to get in the car or walk there, get what you need, come back. However, if you don't believe that you can even do that, which I guess what you can call depression, you don't even believe that you can get up right now, then you can't manifest it. But then you go to the store, you come back, you get whatever you need. And then there's manifestations that are much larger, like giant projects that you aim for. The same elements are present in which are you have to hold the whatever it is in your mind's eye as a vision, and you have to be emotionally invested in it. So there's a drive there, and then both your actions are revolving around it. But there's this other element, which is on the element under question, which is there an extra element in the world that responds to that and then also brings the opportunities to you to make that bigger thing happen? Somebody, blah blah said, maybe it's like a magnet. You set your energy and then give it enough exposure to the world, you will exactly eventually find ferromagnetic metal. I think it's exactly right. This is so accurate. I was like dead in bed while having depression. Yep, I'm sorry you went through that. Pluto. That's depression is not fun at all. I like to think of sound waves and how they are like frequencies, and when those frequencies match, they entrain with each other, become stronger. Right? Wait, but how does the frequency is an analogy to the manifestation? I'm not sure. I'm not really following. This is accurate. I was like, hope you are doing better. Yeah, me too. Yeah, depression is no joke. The craziest thing about depression is that it's literally like every point in space is trying to hold you down. So on the surface of it, it doesn't feel like anything is wrong, but then everything is wrong because literally every point in space is trying to pull you back. Like even opening a cupboard or opening like a drawer is painful. like it's painful to your being to even do that because it's so empty and like it's like tiny, 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 tiny ants are just trying to pull you away. Frequencies attract like frequencies. Interesting. So frequencies don't actually attract like frequencies, but frequencies respond to other frequencies. So yeah, you have a frequency, and then a glass would vibrate if it's the same frequency. I guess it makes sense too that if you vibrate in a particular frequency, you will be transported to whatever possibilities in the multiverse you're vibrating as. This is going to be the imprint of what kind of world line you're going to find yourself in, what kind of history. I can totally see that as working as well. It's okay. I learned a lot from it, maybe too much, and now I'm stuck again. Don't know where to start. Interesting, Pluto. That's a good description. Thank you, Pluto. Thus, we are manifesting what frequencies match. But the frequencies, I feel like they're not the full story. So I hear you, Ava, but I feel that there's another element here. The steering, so there's the frequency, which kind of brings the opportunities, but then there's the moving towards the opportunities and acting inside of the opportunities. And I feel there you also need the holding it in the mind's eye. So it's almost like, a helicopter, you have two steering mechanisms. In the same way, you have the mind holding it in view and then the emotional imprint, and they're both basically kind of steering towards it. One of them is more like the engine, the drive, and the other one is actually the target, like what you're actually manifesting. I want to explore this, Pluto. If you said you're stuck again and you don't know how to start, did you ever try to do small things to just give you the first jump? Like maybe eating dark chocolate. And then when you feel a little bit of the dopamine spike with the serotonin a little bit going up, and then starting moving from there. Did you ever try that? Passion, it's sustainable. Well, let me tell you something, blah blah. If it's chronic depression, the passion, it's hard to explain, but you can't even think of getting out of bed. Forget about passion. When we figure out how to properly manipulate frequencies, the world will change drastically. That's true. I think the steering is conscious awareness. Yeah, I agree with that. Conscious intention. Bashar says there's time lapse built into manifestation at our level of consciousness because, well, wasn't we would be accidentally manifesting whatever thought. Yep, I agree with that 100%. I've actually seen that before, and that is a very accurate description about what you said about Bashar, which is that he essentially says that the physical matter is like the moment, it's like the hiatus element of the manifestation, because otherwise it's like we're still learning. And if we would just be manifesting it like that, then if we're not trained enough, we would just manifest. If you would have a negative mindset, you would just manifest hell all the time, and that would be terrible. So this is why the mechanism of the physical world is in place, so we get to practice. Matter is light in a higher density. Well, no, it will be the opposite. So if you want, you can say that light, so mass, you can say that mass is captured energy, but definitely, and light is more interesting. I think light is not exactly just energy. So it carries energy, but at least in physical terms, that would not be accurate. Like the double slit experiment, when we observe and put consciousness towards something, it changes the state. I'm ADHD, and it's just the lows that take me to the restart again. I'm just exhausted and yeah, to work. Oh yeah. I feel you there. Manifesting is energy. It can work on hive mind levels as well as like a football, red versus blue, like a battery. Matter would be some more dense. The slower the frequency, the more dense. Yeah. Have you explored the idea that your red laser induce a kind of synesthesia, visual, the symbols, changing the connection while in DMT? Nope. No synesthesia. It just looks what it is. Serendipity for sure. I'm familiar with it. Monroe. Oh, interesting. Yeah, the way around. As for what you said, Ava, what did you say over here? Double slit experiment. This double slit experiment is a tricky one because even though I agree that there's an element there that needs to be looked at again by science in a slightly different from a slightly different perspective. It I think it's more mysterious that even that's than spiritual people ascertain, which is that you don't need a person to be there like a conscious unit. All you have to do is to put a photon detector, which means it's a physical process that breaks the wave function, makes it collapse. So if you put a photon detector, in other words, that's what scientists mean by look, right? It's not a person looking, it's that you're just putting something there. And when if it's present, then all of a sudden it starts behaving like a particle versus behaving like a wave, which is the mind fuck. And I think that actually points to a much deeper mystery than just consciousness influences it, because I think it's much crazier than that. How do you think the observation theory connect to manifestation? So I think that it's actually kind of close to what Ava said about the frequency thing, but essentially is that all these possibilities exist, and then you choose one by putting your attention on it. But the what we mean by attention is much more. It's much more than what we think it is. It's almost like the universal attention is being put on it, and then that thing is it's the thing that sends you through that trajectory in history versus another one. It's almost like you get glued to different histories according to where your attention goes. But because what I just said, which is that even if you put something that just detects if the photon is there, collapses the wave function and it starts behaving like a particle, tells you that it's much more mysterious than a complex consciousness looking at it, because even it means that any kind of interaction with another potential observation even will make it collapse into this history versus another history, which puts into question what we mean by observation and an observer. Like without it being observed, it won't happen. Intention is the one. Let's see. How do you think observation theory connects? I think it's more of not an observer, but an intention. Maybe intention. Interesting. The oneness. Like without it being observed, it won't happen. Intention is what creates consciousness, but it seems there needs to be some sort of additional alignment for it to manifest. What if we weren't thinking of consciousness in as vast way regarding double slit? Sure, but then you have to. But then, if you want to say that everything is conscious, why doesn't the wave function collapse without the thing that is registering if the photon is there? If every single thing is conscious, you would not expect to see the wave ever. See, that's the problem with that experiment. Hey, man. When you go inside your car, it's still outside parked in the driveway. Wait, I missed something. I've heard to use crystal, one must find a still mind first, then focus on the crystal while in that state. Wonder if it's related to manifestation. What are you looking at all this time or not? The argument doesn't hold weight for me. Are you saying that the thing you yourself just mentioned doesn't hold weight for you? What if it's the observation of the observer regarding the double slit? So that's what I'm saying. That you don't need a human observer. You just put a photon detector, which is just a device that registers. So okay, so double slit experiment. You send a photon, right? It behaves like a wave. It interferes with itself, even if we send one photon at a time. So we know we can isolate. We can send one at a time. Even if you send one at a time every week, eventually it will when you send enough of them, it will still create a pattern as if there was a wave. So even though we know the particle is a particle, for some reason it almost like it knows it's part of some kind of a wave and it creates the pattern of a wave. But if you put something that can register if the photon went through this slit or this slit, even just because this thing is present and it's not a person, right? The second you do that, it goes back to being two lines. It's just two lines. That's how crazy that is. Even if you do delayed observation, so even if you do that, you seal the result in an envelope. It's crazy. That's why I'm saying it's more mysterious than even spiritual people consider, I think. What are your thoughts on the ether and its role in consciousness? Right, but our consciousness is observing the photon. Um, you always have an observer eventually finding out the results, but that's always the case. What changes still, so you also observe the results when it's a wave. You see what I'm saying? So a conscious being can also see it as a wave under other conditions. So if you want to say that it's the, you always have a person seeing it, well, okay, but you also have a person seeing the wave, so you see both depending on the conditions. So clearly the thing that changed isn't the person, but something about the conditions. It's a mind blow. Yes, but when it wasn't observed, the photon was hitting only one side, and when observed, it moved. Wait. Yes, but when it wasn't observed, the photon was hitting only one side, and when observed, it moved in a wave pattern and scattered. No, it's the other way around. So when it's observed, it starts behaving like a particle. So try and run that thought experiment again. I do see what you see. Fascinating, inquisitive. I know. What if they aren't meant to understand? Well, then what's the point of trying, right? Wavical. I like wavical. Pave is not as catchy. Wavical is great. Yeah, I think honestly, the many world is actually the one that makes the most sense, because there's a state in which the wave is still part of all the worlds, and when the particle is part of that larger wave, it still shows that it's part of that wave. But when we glue it to one reality by observing it, then it stops being part of the larger wave and it becomes only part of this reality. I think that's the thing that makes the most sense. And I actually don't know why physicists having us like a, it's almost like just the insistence of seeing things in classical terms is the only reason to make it look that crazy. I mean, it is crazy, but it's not that crazy if you consider that what I just said is a possibility, right? So yes, you're right the other way, but either way, it changes while being observed. Again, it changes when there's a photon detector, not when you're looking at it. So it's still a physical effect. Still a physical process of some sort. So that's what makes it extra interesting. That it's always the case that when you put the photon detector, it changes behavior, and which tells you that some kind of a concrete effect. But again, it's not necessarily a person. A person sees it later, but like we said with Ava, a person also sees the other option when it's a wave. There wouldn't be Danny's laser thing then. Exactly. So then what's the point, right? And by the way, the question about the ether, I'm not sure what you're referring. If you're referring to primordial ether that they used to consider in the 1800s, that idea was kind of kind of dropped a long time ago. There is no, because the idea of the ether is there was just some kind of a thing that the universe is made out of, but not, it was never specified. That's why it's when people say the ether doesn't exist, it's not exactly right. It's just that what we consider to be the ether, we now consider to be the quantum fields. So the idea just grew, basically. Essentially, the most accurate description that we have of the world of anything is the quantum field theory, which essentially is the standard model. And what it postulates is that the universe is a collection of quantum fields, and perturbations in these fields, when they interact with each other, appear to us like particles percolating. But they're not particles, they're excitations in the field. And that's what the ether is. Now, there are other models, like the Stephen Wolfram model, that are now postulating that actually there's this computational space, hypergraph, causal graph, hypergraph, Ruyad, and all these descriptive tools. But what they describe is also that space itself is made out of particles, and they give you an assessment of how small these particles would be, and they will be different than the particles of matter. They will be actual particles of space, which is different. They're much, 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 much smaller. In fact, they're smaller. If I'm not mistaken, they're smaller than the Planck scale. And the result of the interactions of these particles of space itself is what gives rise to everything, including all of our laws of physics and other laws of physics, and every possible thing, including observers. So I guess you can call that the ether. What is quantum engagement? Is when you propose in a superposition. Ba-dum-bum. If I would be faster, it would be funnier. Entanglement. Entanglement is a state that scientists at the moment don't really know how to explain, but essentially when particles are entangled, it means that the result of measuring one automatically tells you something about the result of the other. So it's not that so basically if you measured spin down here, an entangled particle that with that particle would necessarily be spin up, okay? And you know that with 100% certainty, which means that you get information about the other particle without ever needing to know anything about it. So it means that the particles knew about each other's states. I would modify this description, and I would actually say that it's not that there was some kind of a message that traveled between them, is that they were literally, well, it's in the word entangled, right? They are the same object. I think that what's going on there, if I have to make a wild guess, is that when they're in that state, they essentially drop back into the primordial state in which they are interconnected. It's only when things are excited up. So almost think of it like a soup, right? So when it bubbles, you have things fly off, like little particles fly off the surface. When it's off the surface, then they look separate. They came from the same element and they fall back into the same element. So they don't have enough energy. So when in an entangled state, essentially it goes back to being on the surface of the soup. And because it's the same surface, the metaphor breaks down a little bit, because even in the soup, when you're in two different parts of the surface, you're in different parts of the surface. But the descriptive part of the fabric of reality, when you go back to that surface, whatever is being the state of being part of that surface is by definition being part of the full thing, which means that if you perturb one, the other one automatically feels the influence. So it's not even that there's a message going through, but it's the same object in a higher dimension. Does that make any sense, or was that confusing? Let's see. We have a lot of comments here. Finally hit a topic that I know a thing or two about. We're essentially finding Easter eggs and trying to figure out if we can use them to make hacks. Basically, yeah. Wouldn't be greeting. How are you, Master Rich? What's the laser thing? Well, that's essentially what my discovery is, Kane, is that if you project a diffracted laser on the surface while ingesting a particular molecule that I cannot pronounce the name of in a live chat, you will see code running in surfaces. And we now have, I always say about 1,000 replications. I think we're over 1,000 replications worldwide at this point, and which is wild because, it's unheard of. And yeah, now I'm in a conversation with a few interesting people, including some scientists in the field. Double slit experiment, quantum physics, photon detector. We are essentially finding yeah, we saw that. What is quantum engagement? Thank you. Space made of particle wave vibrations. No, so Debbie 007 is space made of particles or wave vibrations. It depending what model, it depends on what model you're following, right? Don't forget that all these models, they're just descriptive tools. We don't know what the real thing is, and scientists would readily admit that, or at least any scientist worth their salt. In Wolfram's model, they're definitely particles, specifically particles and not waves. You can find under loop quantum gravity, for example, postulates that the fabric of space is made out of rings that are attached to each other. Huh? Okay, well, attached to each other, and they're essentially influenced by density distribution. I think I might be matching. Yeah, I think that's correct. But you can check me on that. But it's essentially it's just that the way you use math is a little different. For example, describing a ring is different than describing a point, which is different than describing a wave. These are different structures that have a different mathematics attached to them. But it's all attempts to try and explain the fundamental behavior of both space and particles and forces in space and all of that. For example, loop quantum gravity. The description of rings in every point in space, according to it, you have literally like a ring, and all these rings are attached in points, and the distribution of space and the way it behaves is essentially the average of the movement of all these rings. And the ring, I think, if I'm not mistaken, also goes into a higher dimension. I actually let me check that. I don't want to lie to you because I might be confusing it with string theory, in which you definitely have these strings that are basically attached to higher dimensional membranes. But let me see. Is the quantum gravity operates in higher dimensions? Let's see. Something from nothingness in a sense. Not sure what you're referring to there, Kane. Wavicles, I love this. Everything is at frequency, vibration operating at a different rates from my understanding. Another interesting one is coral. You can jumped. Relax, Richard Feynman, which is funny in this context. We named our new puppy Richard Feynman. He's very cute. Let's see, because it jumped on me. I like a oneness. Wavicle is great. What is physical reality? Different frequencies need to connect with people experience and in the ease with quantum mechanics and modern science theories. So thank you for that, Sharon. And essentially, that's essentially what my big toe is doing. Oh, by the way, we got an answer there. And yeah, Thomas Campbell is actually approaching this. So if you want to check him out, if you're not familiar, he's connecting a lot of these things. Thomas Campbell, you would love everything he has to say. Thank you for being here. Oh, also, let's bring the chat up a little bit if you guys don't mind. Let's give it some likes so we have more people coming in. Master Witch Dream, is that like string theory? Not exactly, no. It's its own field in physics. Let me see actually if I'm correct about the theoretical framework aimed at unifying quantum mechanics, general relativity, by quantizing space-time itself, which is exactly what we're talking about right now. This is loop quantum gravity, LQG. It primarily operates within the conventional four-dimensional space-time, so I was wrong. Three spatial dimensions and one time dimension described by general relativity. However, there are several points to consider regarding higher dimensions in the context of LQG. Four-dimensional framework, the original and most commonly studied formulation, LQG is a dimensional space-time in terms of describe quantum properties. Itself, without introducing additional spatial dimensions. Okay, so it just basically it takes the geometry of space and it tries to make sense of it in terms of these loops in these little rings. Yeah, last one. Stop jumping on me. In my ND, I felt vibration levels. Interesting, Sharon. You want to share more about that? Thomas Campbell, thanks. Yep. Like negative spaces, general relativity has flaws. Has string theory be debunked? What's your thoughts on Mandela effect? Okay, so one at a time. So first of all, to say that a theory has flaws is kind of redundant because of course, all theories have, they're not flaws. They're essentially just incomplete portions because we know it doesn't describe all of reality. So every acceptable theory has that element of it, right? Otherwise, we would have the theory of everything. And as far as string theory, to say that it was debunked, I mean, yeah, you have a lot of people talking about it, like Weinstein. But honestly, it's not really clear if string theory is even really a theory of more of a framework, because it's essentially a very complex mathematical structure that did do some work in coming up with new frameworks to look at particular problems that actually eventually can lead to solutions in physics. I'm definitely not an expert to comment like very deeply, but at least on a social level, I can tell you that it's hard to parse. The main complaint, which I'm sure you're familiar, is that they took a lot of the resources and the mind power from the community and almost like try to shove everybody aside, and in the meanwhile not coming up with any reproducible results. It's almost like they confused what field they should be in. They're essentially, like, the claim is that it's not really a theory of physics but of mathematics. That's the main complaint. It does make predictions, but the predictions that it makes has about 10 to the power of 500 results, which is, for all intents and purposes, is infinite, which means it doesn't really make any real predictions about the physical world. As I proceeded out of my body, I ascended in a vibratory frequency. When I returning descended. Interesting. Interesting, Sharon. What was that? What was the reason for the NDE, by the way? The beauty of science is that there is always room for better understanding things we may not be. That's true. Able to manipulate now, our children might be the future. I think, therefore, I am. Things true with this topic. Rings true with this topic. I see. Well, I don't know if you necessarily have to think, therefore you are. Hello, Melissa. Have an awesome night, brother. Have a good night, Kane. I think perceiving the world is not necessarily meaning to think in the world. I feel like these are separate functions. Let's see. Have you explored the idea that you... Oh, I saw that. Do you know what synesthesia is? Yes, absolutely. Why do you ask, Alexis? Hello, Melissa. Sorry, I'll be right back, guys. 1 second. What? Oh. Wait, I was trying to turn on the washer, but I couldn't find that. Sorry about that. Had a lot of coffee today. And meanwhile, I see a lot of likes. So appreciate it. No object. Let's see. I describe it thusly: infinite, omnidirectional emptiness, complete fullness, no self or other. How do you, well, if there's no, well, okay. I can understand if there's no self, but would you say that there's no perception either? Included before the still aware. I have turned my mind off completely before and still aware. How do you know that your mind is completely off then? What about the first law of hermetics? The universe is mental. Yeah, essentially idealism in philosophy, and I think that's essentially what's going on. But without a mind or consciousness, you can't, essentially being an NPC unaware. Well, I would well, yeah, that's true. But then an NPC is still some kind of a function that is being run on some kind of a substrate. I don't know how to explain, but to get there, my body had to be completely relaxed. Right. So I'm only asking that. I mean, I've had a state of non-dual, what you would call non-dual, in which there's just the world. But I wouldn't say that your brain or your mind shuts off. I think the mind is all there is. I think the mind never shuts off. Or maybe it's just a terms thing. Maybe we're just talking about semantics here. Can't do. Keeps jumping on me. Can't do this one with any tension. Mentalism. The world is a dense frequency as compared to others. There are also more dense dimensions than here. I agree with that. Mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. That's a great quote. Is that yours? That is a great quote. I'll save this. Or perhaps different definitions. Think of mental as consciousness. I do believe everything is conscious. Yeah, I agree with that. We are able to have control over our happiness, our lives, by mentally making it happen. I agree with, I think we influence it, but there's still some kind of an average that I guess we would call the external environment. Would you disagree with that? I met it was completely silent still. Forgot everything. Yep. I would say it tracks with the non dual state. Consciousness awareness of eternal and internal stimuli, psychology. Psychology is a social science through empirical data. Interesting. Okay. Oh, we dropped a little bit, I think, because I stepped aside. If we can give it a few likes just so we can bring a little bit more people back. And again, to all the newcomers, just so you know, this channel usually revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I claim to have found proof that we live in a simulation. It's an experiment that anybody can replicate. And we're meeting here daily, and we discuss the implications, science, philosophy, spirituality, and all fun stuff. Have you heard of Muji perspective on reality? No. You can tell me about it. Thank you, Wesley Quinn. Up. Lasher. Up. Again, sent an invite by mistake. Again, I very often send this invite by mistake simply because, oh, there we go. Well, welcome. You can always come on.
Hello.
Hello, Sharon.
Yes, hey.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Great. Is there something you specifically you want to talk about?
Well, I've never joined one of these before.
Welcome.
Not really. I don't know. I just accepted your thing.
Oh, cool. Yeah, very often it's like it sends an invite by mistake. It's not a problem. We can always, because I'm always open for a chat. What is your? Let me look at your last comment. Hold on. Many things were once pseudoscience, then they weren't. It happens. Yeah, but most of the time it goes the other way. Would you not agree? This is all. I think you're new to my channel, but essentially my whole thing is to try and keep a balanced view of the whole thing. I think that science can be very rigid very often, and I think that as is actually to its detriment. But I also think that spiritual people can get a little bit too. So what was the phrase? Don't get so open-minded that your brain is gonna fall out. Right?
Yes.
That's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
I agree.
Amazing.
Yes, I had a near-death experience. It kind of, my mom had one. I've had one. My daughter's had one.
Wait, what? Why are you guys so almost dying? That's kind of it's almost alarming.
No, it's just my mom had all her teeth pulled out in an operation, and during the operation, she left her body. She didn't have a very long experience. Mine was a little bit longer than my mother's, and then my daughter's was even more longer and detailed than mine was. So it just, I don't know. It's just kind of the women in our family seem to have an experience.
That it sounds like that, like you're predisposed. What was? Because I remember from your comment, you said something about feeling the difference in the frequency level, right?
Yeah,
When you
and
go
that
up
was
and
one
down.
of the biggest things I came back with was the realization. I mean, I was kind of scientifically minded growing up, but that's one thing I remember when I came back was the feeling of descending in vibration. Like I felt my whatever who me was vibrating at like a harmony or a frequency, and I was at a dense frequency at start point, and then as I left my body and floated up to the ceiling, my frequency would increase, you know, and it went into levels, like levels of increase. So it would go up a little bit, then it'd go up a little more, and a little bit more, until I found myself at the ceiling, and then walking through a door and going to another side. So
Whoa! And then when did you come back? Was it what? Remind me, what was yours? What induced it? What was the catalyst?
well, mine was my mother's. Like my mother's, she actually was in an operation. I was at the dentist, and I can't even imagine. You know, I thought, well, maybe I was just high, maybe I was dreaming. I didn't, you know. But over years, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I was pretty thin. And I think back in the day, they used to give us adult levels of nitrous oxide, and so and what I did find is that children were often being overdosed during the time when I was growing up. So I imagine that's the only thing I can imagine that happened to me that made me leave my body. so you know, as far as my daughter goes, she just came to me one day at 3.5 and started talking about the spiritual realm, going through a tunnel. And she basically saw, and I know this is going to sound religious, but she basically saw God, heaven, Jesus. And then she traveled around and she basically had an excursion and basically heaven and hell. She actually traveled to hell too.
Whoa, that is heavy.
And they tried to, it's just a different place. And so she had this whole excursion experience. And she said for 3 days and nights, she kept experiencing this. So it was like.
That was your daughter?
She told me that she would go, like every night she would go to heaven and come back, and then she'd go to heaven and come back. So like each night she was doing this for a while, for a period of time.
And
now that she's older, she says she only thinks it happened 3 nights, but there's a lot of things she doesn't remember now, but she's like 10 now. So
interesting. And do you guys have a Christian background?
I didn't when I was 9, and my mom didn't. My mom might have. I think they did do the Catholic Church, but we were kind of secular growing up.
Interesting.
But so I kind of heard about Jesus. I think my grandmother was religious, so I saw his picture on my grandmother's wall, and that's all I knew. So
I mean, Jesus is everywhere. You don't. You don't.
I didn't know who Jesus was really. I knew he was supposed to be something, but I didn't know what. And so when I had my experience, the light, the source, and I saw rays of light coming from this source that I perceived as God. And it had energy and I had frequency. And I remember it just being told that it creates the universe, the frequency of the rays coming from the central point where God is, creates the entire universe. But I just remember Jesus kept trying to show up in my experience, and I didn't know him. And the only thing I knew was I didn't know who he was. I didn't know much about him. But I was sent back to go learn about him. So basically I was told, because God was talking to me telepathically, not so much Jesus, but the light that I perceive as God was talking to me telepathically. So he basically, told me I needed to go back and I needed to study and figure out who this man that was appearing before me that looked like Jesus.
And did you take that advice seriously?
I did, yes.
And how long ago was this?
It took me quite a few years before I really delved into it, because I was only 9 when I had the experience, and I didn't realize what it was. I thought it was a dream, but it took me a lot of years to realize it wasn't really a dream, that there was a little bit more to it, or my belief now is that it wasn't.
Did it feel more realistic than a dream?
Yes. Yeah, because if it was like this was the dream. When I was over there, this was the dream.
Yeah, it's the same experience that people report when they're on the molecule that I cannot name on the live chat. Actually,
so about 30 in my 30s, I really started studying, and I moved to the mountains for a time, and had a lot of time on my hands. So I read a lot of things. I even read like the Urantia book and numerous religious doctrines and different things, and just really studied, and kind of found that, between science and I kind of found my central belief that kind of brings them together to a certain degree, but I don't have all the details, but I have enough that I feel pretty confident that it all connects. So
interesting. I have a friend who last year had an open heart surgery, and he's a pretty secular guy, and he basically came back and talking about like a full on, out of body experience. He went and saw his mom in Ireland, and he said it was like as real as anything.
Yeah, it's more real. It's actually more real. This is the dream. It's like the Matrix, as if you jump into another reality. That reality is more real. And so when I was there, I was starting to forget the reality here that I had lived up to that point. My best friend, my mom, they were fading. The memory, and I wasn't there that long, but it was like they were fading out, and I was in this whole more real place. So that's what I remember.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know, but this channel is mostly actually revolving around the simulation hypothesis. That's because I claim to have found proof to believe in a simulation. And essentially, it has to do if you project a diffracted laser on the surface while you are on a particular molecule, you can actually see code running in surfaces. And we know.
Well, I think that it's all created in code, because I think mathematics is most certainly used as the foundation of everything, because, mathematics is the basis of everything, and it would
the logical be relationships,
the original simulation versus an artificial simulation. Source has the original simulation.
Well, it's just layers. I would assume that it doesn't go like, I don't know. Whenever, like, to me, the thing that makes the most sense is that it's concentric circles, right? It doesn't go us God. It goes us infinite number of things and civilizations all the way up to somewhere up there, which is like all one unified thing. But I feel there's like I do feel that people, I'm not saying you are, because I don't know the specifics of your actual experience, but whenever I hear particular things, I do feel that people, it just makes sense to me. My intuition tells me that very often we conflate a few layers above us with the source. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. The only thing I saw was an energy point that everything comes from, but it has personality, and it speaks to you telepathically.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, we agree on that.
And also as I ascended up the frequencies, obviously, it's like you feel better. It's like you're vibing at a higher frequency. You actually feel better.
Feel lighter. Feel like everything is more love, right?
Yes, more love. And more love permeates. Exactly.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. So did you only have it one time in your life?
I had it one time, and it was, I remember Elvis passed away, and I think it was maybe around that time or something.
Maybe it was Elvis.
No, it wasn't Elvis. No, but it was about that time. I was like,
some people do call him,
I don't remember when Elvis,
the god of rock and roll. So wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it was pretty freaky. My mom had the same experience. When she had all her teeth pulled at once, she floated up to the ceiling, and she got stuck up there. She didn't get stuck. I kind of got stuck, but she was willing herself back down. And so, because she had 3 children, which was us, and she just told me she remembered just saying, "I have to get back down. I have to get back down." And she didn't cross past the ceiling. She didn't go to the other side, whatever barrier, doorway, whatever, tunnel or whatever. She didn't go to the other side. She willed herself back down into her body. So,
yeah, I don't want to invite it, but it sounds like I should go to the dentist more often.
Well, hers was the same, and you know what is really strange? It was the same dentist.
Oh well, then definitely you need to give me the details of that dentist, because clearly he's giving people something that sounds awesome.
I think so. Yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody in the chat has
thank you.
of
I
course,
gotta go now, but thank you.
of course. Thank you so much for joining. Just get some nitrous. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I've actually heard this before. That nitrous essentially is kind of causing that to happen quite often. Well, at least this is what a lot of people report, and maybe there's something about anesthesia in general that kind of sends you there, because on general anesthesia that also happens. How many people here in the comments also experience something like this purely from nitros, like either or general anesthesia? One example is past life regression hypnosis. Don't research it at all. Wait, don't research it at all. Happened to me, but I didn't feel like I died or left my body. You have less oxygen. Sure. I mean, look, you can throw you can throw a physicalist explanation on everything. That's not a problem. I think that's already the axiom, right? It doesn't tell us much about the reality of the situation, because there are, I guess, ways to try and triangulate which one is more correct. And ultimately, I think that what will really determine that is if there's something that we can tease out from these higher spaces that is repeatably applicable to something new that we've never seen before, and it can do something. So it has like a function of some sort. But you can explain anything away. Of others who find books and online scare numbers, highly detailed correlations. Wait, I don't know if I'm following. Someone to compare the recording of the session with how many volts does an automated electric defibrillator use to restart a heart. Interesting. Find someone to do. Okay. Access subconscious. It's subjective. Everything is subjective. Even our agreement of what's objective is experienced by your subjective moment. Everyone's consciousnesses will give them something mildly different. I doubt there's one objective. Well, we both can't walk through a wall, and our bodies will agree there's a wall there, right? Power of plant fit reality, because we're all seeing it through our own subjective perspective. So yeah, we'll have different perceptions of it, maybe slightly, but there are things that you can call them regularities that we can all agree on, and it's actually what my discovery revolves around. That all of a sudden there's something that you can actually all agree that is there. Not everything is subjective. No, I'm saying that the distinction between subjective and objective has too much being made in its favor. So like people make too much of these ideas, because ultimately, if you assume that the world is not an object, it's not physical, which at this point even physicists admit that there's no reason to believe that it is. I don't even think it's a controversial point anymore. Then the word objective is no longer the basis for determining these things, right? Because the whole point of objective, the way we used to use it, is that, well, look, we can debate certain things, but ultimately, if we can all touch it, it's objective. The object is our base. And we always refer to the base to know what is real. But if you throw away the idea that reality at its core is an object, then the idea that something is objective stops being your baseline, essentially. So all I'm saying is that you have to look at every case individually, because the only thing you really have is your experience of something that is repeating itself again and again and again. And if something repeats itself enough times, you can rely on that. But there's a lot of like Sam Harris always points out, there are a lot of objective facts about your subjective experience. So it's just like regularities that happen on very often, that we can rely on to discern what might come next. I think that's a more helpful framework. Objective, not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. Have done. Okay, so okay, well, right. So, for example, it is objectively true that almost no one here, if anyone, thought of Abraham Lincoln in the last 2 minutes. Okay? And I can say this with almost 100% certainty. Now, how can I say this? This is I'm claiming to know something objectively about a group of people I never met, right? And we're just on the internet. But there's something about me knowing certain statistical probabilities of thought about myself and about other humans that makes me determine that that is very unlikely because of the subject matter we were talking about. So it's possible that somebody's mind drifted there, but it's extremely unlikely. Now, that is an objective claim about your subjective experience. So in that regard, you can see that just saying that something doesn't care about your emotions is not sufficient to call it subjective or objective, because this is objective, but it's an objective fact about a mind that constantly experiences emotions and all kinds of things, right? So this is why I'm reframing it, and I'm using. I think that the more useful framework is regularities in experience or real or whatever you want to call reality, and we can call reality the insisting experiential elements that are always there or very often there, and they seem to be there for other individuals that look like us, that tell us that they're there for them. So it's almost like there's a consensus, but we don't have to even agree on what gives rise to it. We just know that as far as our experience is concerned, that always happens or very often happens, and that's what we're relying on. So that's why I call it regularities versus either laws of physics or objective or subjective, because the second you get into the whole subjective objective argument with people or conversation, there's a lot of misunderstandings because of the way that people use the term or the tilt that they have towards it or the attachment they have towards it. Let's see. We got to be there at 7?
6:55.
Okay.
10 minutes at first.
Okay, cool. So we're gonna go for another at least 10 minutes. We gotta go give our new puppy some shots. Ava said, even facts can be subjective based on the perspective. I agree with that. Yeah. Well, facts are basically, again, statements about what we observe on a regular basis. But I fully agree with you that if it was a response to blah blah, I fully agree with you that they can have subjective interpretations. That's absolutely true. Wait, you need to try QHHT once. What is that? Thought about him yesterday, LOL, but not in the last 2 minutes. See? Thank you, Anthony. Anthony Basketball. That's where you're wrong. I think of old, honest Abe constantly. Is that a kink? You want to tell us about it? But also, well, in that case, you should consider yourself as a genius. Power plant fit. Take it back. Nailed it with the objectively being high enough probability. The subconscious being accessed isn't the same one as Freudian psychology speaks of. Would you mind to extrapolate? Because I'm not sure what you mean by that. Agreed. High probability ruled out bad dad and bad actors. Thanks for the chat. Fun. I followed you. Thank you so much, S. Millen. Unconscious. Freud uses unconscious. And well, he came up with the idea actually, and then Carl Jung essentially took it to the next level. Thank you for joining, by the way. Facts are valid by time. Over time, many things believed to be fact have changed. Agree subjective. Just a big law buff. Thanks, I do. Um, yeah, I think yeah, if we reframe things and make them a little bit more malleable in the way that I just described, I think it eliminates a lot of misunderstandings and unnecessary arguments that people have about this all that stuff, right? Because some people, well, I'll give you an example. Like people sometimes would argue about I don't know. It's like anything. Like, well, we know that when this is the thing that gives rise to misunderstandings and confusions. Like people that are more scientifically minded, which by the way, I belong to that family. Uh, but like I've relaxed myself enough around it to understand that that's actually a delusion that people that tend to have my mindset have, which essentially they say, well, look, we know that this part of the brain produces this kind of conscious experience. No, you know that when you observe activity in this part of the brain, then this kind of conscious experience happens. These are not the same statements. We have no idea what gives rise to the actual conscious experience. That's the truth, right? And that is not a controversial claim. We have no idea how it arises. And the confusion starts when people starts labeling, start stopping. Does that even make sense? They start stopping thinking about things in a deep level that they called objective. So the second they labeled something objective, they're like, don't need to think about that anymore. And then they labeled the fact, quote unquote, that when this part of the brain lights up, it causes a lot of whatever. And they say, well, I don't have to think about it anymore so much because we know that this part of the brain does this. Explained. It isn't. There's a hard problem of consciousness. There's the explanatory gap. You have no idea how it comes to pass. And then what's interesting is that people will go in circles arguing about this, and then eventually they will land on like, well, look, even if it is somehow like it doesn't matter, right? No, that was the question from the beginning, right? But the point is that unless we are taking it to some kind of a functional level where it matters to either something that we do on a person on a personal level, and we can make our experience better through it, or if we can collectively make the experience of humans better by understanding some of these things, then it has some role to play. But we always have to be mindful of what that role is. Even if we want to say that we just want to have a philosophical and fun discussion and it's entertainment, awesome. But then know that that's what you're doing and don't get too worked up about it. But my point is that whenever you start labeling things subjective, objective, and just kind of rely on that as your go-to, as the final arbiter or whatever it is, it actually doesn't lead anywhere, because the discussion is really around people's insistence that the world is either this or that. Chase their tails just like everyone else. Scientists chase their tails. Well, they do and they don't. I mean, scientists, in the end of the day, also gave us the modern world. They're the reason that we can have this beautiful discussion right now on this phone. So there is something to be said about science, right? Thank you, Debbie. It's pretty great how the mind works, knowing that nothing stays the same, everything is changing. And yet, there are a lot of regularities that we observe. I don't know if it's a simulation, but I got the feeling before that I'm trapped. Interesting. There's an arrogance that hinders modern scientific thought. I think there's arrogance in all human endeavors. There's definitely a lot of arrogance in the spiritual community as well. So there's the arrogance in science that kind of follows the trend that I just described, which is scientists say, well, we know that X and Y, and then you just kind of, we don't need to talk about it anymore. Fully agreed. However, you have a lot of cases in the spiritual community in which people just go, they take something that actually scientists took decades to discover through theories and observations and a lot of work. And then they take a concept, like they say quantum, and then they hijack that concept and they say, okay, now we're going to use it this way. And then when you try to explain to them, well, it doesn't mean that. They're like, well, you don't understand. I was like, wait a second. The only reason you know about this term is because people spent decades, the smartest people that ever existed, they spent decades studying this, trying to understand it. That's the only reason you know about it. And now when it got like you receive the baton and you go, okay, thanks. Now I'm going to run with it and do whatever I want with it. Well, no, that's arrogance. You you would like to consult at least a little bit with the people who discovered it, right? So I think arrogance is just part of the human tapestry in general. And it's just that in spiritual circles, it's masked a little bit better because spiritual people tend to know they're focused more on the human dimension. So they're a little bit better at, well, putting a mask that, at least to them, seems to be invisible, but it's still a human mask, just like everything else. There's a lot of arrogance in all human domains. The power of an open mind. Exactly. Scientific. Subjective depends on a personal perception or opinion. Objective removes personal perception or opinion. I think we went through this. I think you gave this comment before, so I don't. It's mind over matter. Arrogance is subjective. Yeah, exactly. Knowing is so much easier than figuring it out. So yeah, so the other day we were talking about Terrence Howard is a perfect example of that, right? Some people saw him as a hero and they say, look, he's sticking it to the arrogant scientists, but everything he was doing was arrogant. So I love how the most in-depth study of reincarnation was done by someone trying to disprove it. That is usually the best studies, right? When people trying to disprove something and discover that they're actually real. Which one are you referring to, by the way? People want to fake confidence. I should say learning is easier than figuring it out. True. That is 100% true. I think this is why always keeping in mind that we are very fallible. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. Helps to not being embarrassed in the future, I think. In fact, again, it's true that sometimes there is this like air of arrogance from the scientific community, but because the scientific community is constantly checking itself, it's very difficult to find real arrogance in the scientific community, like real arrogance, because people are constantly afraid of being wrong because they have very smart peers who constantly trying to prove them wrong. And this is a mechanism you don't have in the spiritual community because it's actually the opposite. Everything is kind of accepted on the face of it, which again, it's fine. But I think it's also why I think that spiritual pursuit still have facts attached to them. And it would actually be a much faster route if people would also tend to have some kind of some minimal criticism of certain kinds of doctrines. Runs big ego. Spirituality means different things to different people. Yeah. And just a final point on the subjective objective is it's true that what we call subjective is just someone's opinion, but I think that what is actually meant by that is just that it's one point of view of what reality is, and then what we call objective is seeming regularities that are agreed upon by different points of view. In other words, when you have a collection of enough subjective points of view that agree on something, we call it objective. I think it's a more accurate description of it. We gotta go? Oh, I'm gonna come. All right, everybody. I think science gets misinterpreted by lay people way too often as well. I agree. Arrogance in the spirituality community because everyone thinks they're God. I'm late. How much we missed. Hey, Stephen Moore. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the end today. But tomorrow we'll definitely meet up again. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for this lively discussion. It was really awesome. And I'll see you everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow, I think it's going to be closer to the same time as today. So closer to maybe 5 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everybody. Much love to everyone. Bye-bye. Hasta mañana. Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow.